Breast stimulation can activate the same area of the brain as regular sex in some women, according to research. This explains why a small percentage of women are able to experience pleasure from this alone. In general, the reactions of the female body are very diverse, and individual differences play an important role. It is important to respect each woman's preferences and needs. You're probably wondering what all of the above information has to do with me. Until I was 28 and married for 2 years. The other important thing is that I had a reason to be highly motivated to find out this information. I need to bore you a little with my past for some of my story to make sense. I grew up in a rough area, I had a lot of fights and few of them I lost. Many fights took place over the defense of my younger brother, whom I loved very much because he is gay, and this was not very well received in society. I probably would have ended up in jail, but when I dropped out of high school my senior year, I met a guy named John who changed my life. Well, maybe met is not the right word. I tried to rob him because he was clearly over 60, and he couldn't have weighed more than 65 kilograms, while I weighed 90 kilograms. We had a fight with him. Afterwards, he asked, "What is your name?" I wasn't going to answer, but when he raised his foot as if to kick me again, I blurted out, "Tom Skindler." "Did you drop out of school?" "Yes." "Tom, I'm going to give you a choice. I will either call the police right now and have you arrested, or you promise me to come to my gym tomorrow for testing and training. What do you choose?" "How do you know that I will appear?" "Because I'm going to look at your ID, and if you don't show up, I'm going to come get you. Next time, I won't be gentle with you." Was it gentle this time? I thought, as my whole body hurt. "I'll go to the gym," I said. "You're not as dumb as you look," John chuckled. "Here is my business card. Be there tomorrow between 13 and 14. Now show me your ID." In short, his gym trained both boxers and MMA fighters. He gave me a job as a janitor and free MMA training on the condition that I get my JED. When I turned 18, he scheduled several fights for me. Although after training my natural weight was 80 kilograms, I fought at welterweight. I won my first 4 matches, drew with the 23rd ranked welterweight in the world, then lost to the 14th and 17th ranked number 1 welterweights. John was honest with me. "Tom, you received your matriculation certificate. You are a good citizen and no longer a punk. But you will never be in the top 10 MMA fighters. You're also much smarter than the average fighter. Act to junior college and make something of yourself." I did as I was told, received an associate's degree in engineering, and then a bachelor's degree in engineering from one of the top 2 public universities in my state, graduating at the age of 24. I met my future wife Bonnie right after graduating from college. She is a year older than me and was in her 3rd year of law school when we met. I think I need to describe us physically. Both she and I have slightly prettier faces than average. I have a few small scars, but they just add character. We both look good in clothes, although we wouldn't immediately throw anyone off, although her legs are much taller than average. Where we both shine in terms of appearance is our naked upper body. Her two-tone eyes really highlight her character. She has one dark blue iris and one bright green iris. Although she has colored contact lenses that she can use depending on the situation, I like it when she doesn't. For some reason, I find her two-tone eyes exotic, and she seems to really appreciate it. Another thing I liked about Bonnie was her friends. It seems like a lot of women have girlfriends who make life difficult for their boyfriends. Not Bonnie. I liked all her friends. In fact, her best friend Julie is just as bubbly and cheerful as Bonnie. She is also very sweet, and is as kind and sweet as any woman I have ever met in my life. Bonnie introduced me to her about 2 weeks after I met Bonnie, and Julie and I became great friends independent of Bonnie. In fact, Julie became probably the best friend I've ever had. There was one problem with Julie, however. One day I saw her in a bikini, and I was amazed by her curves, especially her sculpted cream-colored hips. It took about 2 weeks to get those hips out of my head. It took me about 6 months to convince Bonnie to become exclusive. She finally agreed, and we got married shortly before I turned 26. and she had just turned 27. Julie was her maid of honor, and my brother was my best man. Bonnie, perhaps because of her legal background, chooses her words very carefully. I call this parsing, but perhaps that is the wrong term. In any case, as far as I know, she never lied about anything important, but I had to think carefully about what exactly she said. I knew her telling a subordinate, "You did a hell of a job," which meant, "You're about to get fired." When we were sitting in her parents' friend's living room, and an older gentleman with terrible hair asked her if she liked his new wig, she smiled and said, "You've got a nice bouffant there," which I later convinced her to admit was a reference to his floor covering, not his creepy wig. Even though I have an engineering background, I am far from being the sharpest tool in the shed, and rarely catch Bonnie's dissection unless it is somehow brought to my attention. This involved the vows she wrote for our wedding. They included what became the relevant part: "I'll only sleep with you as long as we're married." We got married by the decision of the magistrate. I am not sure that the average priest, minister, or rabbi would agree to affirm this oath. I had just turned 28 and was thoroughly enjoying my family life when some fly in the ointment appeared. None of the events or situations on their own were enough to make me suspicious of Bonnie, but when put together, I couldn't help but wonder. Bonnie insisted, and in fact, she was obsessed with it, visiting the fitness club early in the morning 4 days a week. It didn't matter what time we went to bed. She had to be there by 7 a.m. At several parties we went to, she had a strange look on her face when she came out of the toilet. She always immediately changed the topic of conversation on her cell phone or disconnected from it when I was nearby while she was discussing something. Sometimes she would return home from going to the bar after work a little disheveled, although she never came later than the time she promised to be home, and we almost always had dinner together. I checked her laundry in the wash and looked for other signs of an affair, but found nothing. Still, it bothered me, so after about 4 months of doubt, I ran into her one night in bed. I wasn't belligerent or nasty in any way, just curious. With a wide smile on her face, and without any visible anxiety, Bonnie said, "What are you doing, little devil? You're jealous, aren't you?" "Jealous of whom?" "Jealous of some imaginary lover," she giggled. "Do I have reason to worry?" Her smile became devilish. "Tom, I swear to you that while we are married, I will not be with any man other than you. If I ever get tired of you, which is damn unlikely," she continued with an evil laugh, "I'll let you know." I wanted to believe Bonnie. I really wanted to. I truly loved being married to her, and I loved everything about her. But I had a bone in my ass, and I couldn't deal with it. Then something unexpected happened. Julie came to visit me. Bonnie was a bridesmaid when Julie got married about 6 months after us to a guy named Ralph. Julie moved about an hour away shortly after she married Ralph, and we didn't see much of her or Ralph anymore. It wasn't a big loss for me that we couldn't see Ralph. He's a big, nasty guy who thinks his shit doesn't stink, but I really missed Julie. Bonnie and Julie talked on the phone or emailed every other day or so, and Julie and I talked or emailed at least once a week. I was sincerely sorry that we could no longer see her often. Julie came to stay, thankfully, without her husband for the long weekend. Besides the fact that I couldn't wait to see my best friend, I was glad that she came for another reason. She did not tolerate alcohol well. I knew Bonnie had told her everything, and if I got Julie drunk, I hoped I could get the information I needed out of her. We had a party for Julie the second night she was with us, mostly with people Julie knew from college and from living near us. Everyone was having a good time. I danced a few dances with Julie and brought her drinks whenever she wanted them, always double, and in one case even triple. By about 11, she was really tipsy. "Listen, Julie," I said, handing her another daiquiri, "you look like you could use some fresh air. Let's go out to the patio, it's a good night." I won't try to imitate the slurredness of her words, but they were garbled. "Of course, handsome," she giggled as I led her to a small sofa on our patio, big enough for two, but not much more. After talking about some things that I thought were stupid, but that interested Julie, I began my subtle interrogation. "Tell me, Julie, Why didn't you warn me about Bonnie's unusual sexual proclivities before I married her? Her face became serious. Have you got any problems? She asked. Hell no, I laughed. Not at all. Some of them are just a little surprising. Yes, some people are surprised, she laughed. Yes, that's exactly true. When did you first learn about them? I realized this a month after I met her in my first year of college. For a while, every day was different for her. I thought. Did you ever think that she would refuse this? I asked. No, stupid. She won't give it up. She will not refuse this. Flashed through my head. Julie's expression began to change from amused to serious, probably in response to the unconscious frown on my face. However, I quickly gave up. Smiling, I continued, well, it's harmless, so I don't mind. Although I don't think she would let anyone else do that to her. Of course not, stupid. Of course, you're right. I managed to get some more information from Julie before Bonnie walked out onto the patio. Why are you two here? Not dancing or hanging out with Julie's old college buddies? She giggled. Julie just wanted to get some fresh air, I chuckled. I think I prepared 2 strong drinks for her. I helped Julie to her feet, and we walked back into the house hand in hand with Bonnie, and I continued to pretend that I was having a good time. Even though I had given up double-strength drinks, Julie passed out about an hour after returning to the party. I asked Bonnie if I should take her to the bed in the guest room, and she was all for it. Do you need any help? She asked. No, no problem just getting her into bed with her clothes on, right? I answered. Take off her blouse and skirt, but don't take off her bra or panties. Don't touch any of the merchandise, dude, okay? Bonnie giggled. Got it, I replied. I picked Julie up with ease, which seemed to surprise Bonnie and several other guests, and carried her to the guest room. I hope it's okay that I put you to bed, Julie, I said with a grin. You weren't yourself, and you really need to get some sleep. Again, I will not attempt to reproduce her garbled speech. Tom, I like you much more than Ralph. Sometimes he acts like a jerk. Do you think if we asked Bonnie, she would let you sleep with me? After a shocked pause, I was quite sure that in her current state, she would not be able to read the surprise on her face. I replied, perhaps it would not be such a good idea. But I really like you, Julie. You are wonderful. Now get some sleep. With these words, I kissed her forehead, covered her with a sheet, turned off the light, and left the room. Interesting, I thought, leaving the room. Depending on how things pan out in the near future, this could be very interesting. I thought back to all of my past relationships with Julie, and for the first time I foolishly realized that what I had interpreted as harmless flirting on her part was probably something more at some point. Not that I would change anything I did based on this, but who knows? The next day, Julie seemed distressed in my presence and seemed to avoid eye contact. She must have remembered what she told me. I tried to be as cheerful and sociable in her presence as I could. However, I had conflicts with Bonnie, and I was on my heels. I wondered if she still had a group of guys. The night Julie visited us for the last time, Bonnie had to run errands after dinner. As soon as she left, Julie walked shyly towards me, wringing her hands. I'm really sorry, Tom. I hope I didn't embarrass you too much with what I told you last night in the guest room. I would never do anything to come between you and Bonnie. Hey, don't think about it, Julie, I whispered, squeezing her hands. You're a great friend. Water rushes over the dam. She looked somewhat relieved, but continued. I also hope I didn't tell you anything you didn't already know about Bonnie on the patio. I'm not sure exactly what I said, but I'm worried. I interrupted her and squeezed her hands again. Don't overthink it. Nothing you said was news to me, I lied. However, I have one concern. It's your comment about Ralph acting like a jerk sometimes. Sit down and tell me about it. We sat next to each other on the living room couch, and I continued to hold her hands. Maybe I calmed her down by holding her hands. Maybe she was desperate. Whatever it was, she opened up to me. By the time Bonnie returned 15 minutes later, I had learned some disturbing things and was convinced that I really didn't like Ralph. As soon as Bonnie walked into the garage, I looked Julie straight in the eye and said, "If I can ever help with Ralph, let me know. I'm serious. There are things in my background that allow me to handle any physical situation, so don't hesitate to call." The last statement obviously came as a surprise to her. Once I got to college, I didn't tell anyone about my MMA experience, not even Bonnie. To them, I was just a regular guy, when in reality, any real welterweight MMA fighter can beat the crap out of 99% of the guys on the street, no matter their size, and I was no exception. Following the information I received from Julie, I did the research I talked about at the beginning of this story. It took me a couple of days on the internet and 2 phone conversations with recognized sex experts to put it all together. When I finished, it felt like a veil had been lifted from my face. I had no idea this was possible. I needed to test Bonnie to know for sure. After Bonnie's secret research, I had one set of answers I needed. Now, to answer my second set of questions, I needed to find out what was going on with Bonnie and the others. I decided not to argue with her. What was more important to me was the high likelihood that other guys would get the opportunity to be with her. The first thing on my mind was her tendency to parse her words and her statement to me that no one would ever sleep with her while we were married. Apparently, she avoided saying anything about getting pleasure in other ways. I, however, could not understand where she would do this. Certainly not at work, as her career was very important to her, and the last thing she needed was to be fired from her junior legal position for acting inappropriately on the job. She was with me almost every evening and most weekends. The winnowing process left only the health club and her infrequent trips to the bar with her coworkers. First, I dealt with a health club. I hired a female private investigator who joined Bonnie's health club and worked out exactly when Bonnie did. After just a week, 4 sessions, she had a worrying report. According to the private investigator, at the end of each session, Bonnie and the male trainer or client went into a separate room for training. They came out 15 or 20 minutes later with smiles on their faces and looking more disheveled and sweaty than when they entered the room. I asked a private investigator to install a camera in this room that would only turn on when Bonnie was in the room. "You know that you can't use what's caught on camera in court, right?" she told me. "I will never tell anyone that I have anything from the camera." "I'm just using it to my advantage," I replied. By the end of the next week, I had what I needed. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I needed. None of them had any internal contact with her, but for some reason that didn't bring me much comfort. I loved Bonnie, and I loved being married to her, so I carefully chose how to proceed. I decided it was best to take a 2-pronged approach. First, deal with the guys to scare them and others away, and then confront Bonnie and force her to change her behavior. I acted quickly. Sunday morning, less than 24 hours after I received the video footage from the private investigator, I went to Jake's apartment. There was a fight. When I returned home, Bonnie was in shock. "What happened to you, honey?" she asked, stroking the bruise on my cheek. "Oh, I met Jake, that guy you mess around with on Mondays." Her face turned ashen gray for a few seconds and her jaw dropped. After about 10 seconds, she pulled herself together and answered, "What are you talking about? You know, dear. Or do you have so many lovers that you can't remember them?" This time, when the color drained from her face, she did not come to her senses, but collapsed into a chair. "We're going to talk a little, Bonnie. I guess technically it wasn't true. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then I'll tell you what's going to happen. You either go along with it or get out. Is it clear?" She looked startled and wide-eyed, but nodded her head. "Yes." "First of all, why don't you tell me about your quirks and preferences? Secondly, why lie to me? Third, why are you looking for it from other guys and not getting it from me?" I asked with noticeable irritation in my voice. She was silent for a long time before answering. Long enough for me to say, "Well," twice before she finally answered. I, I didn't want you to think I was strange. I just wanted to make you happy. I, I let other guys do it because it made me feel really good, and I didn't think it would hurt you since you're the only one who slept with me," she said between sobs. I asked around a little more, but got nothing more from her. Either she really was telling the truth and was emotionally devastated, or I was never going to get that out of her, so I gave it up. Let me tell you what's about to happen. First, you are leaving your current gym immediately. When she lowered her eyes to the ground again, I continued. Secondly, you'll figure out a way to make me feel comfortable enough to trust you again, and if you do that, I won't beat the crap out of Bill and Kurt. If you don't figure out a way, we'll break up and I'll give them a good whack. If you want to get a divorce, we can do it right now, and you can let every guy you meet do what you want. I don't want to leave, she cried. Then she tried to approach me. I pushed her away with my outstretched hand. Then you have a week to figure out how to trust me with you. She nodded her head dejectedly. Yes. What do you want me to make you for dinner? And then you want to watch a movie. Yes, please, she answered timidly. I should have everything ready in an hour, I said. Sheza Harkala upstairs, and I heard water running in the bathroom. That evening we talked about everything except our problem and, huddled together, watched a movie that I let her choose. I know she called her friends to warn them about me. When I went to the health club she went to regularly on Wednesday and asked about Flint, I was told he no longer worked there. I asked about Jake and was told he had an accident and wouldn't be back until the following Monday. On Sunday, Bonnie surprised me with what she came up with to solve my trust issues. She suggested something and I agreed. For the next 6 months, everything went well. I really don't know why she didn't tell me about her preferences in bodily pleasures earlier. I didn't mind and I was happy because it also gave me great pleasure. I had to go on a rare business trip for one night, actually 3 nights. I was wondering if I should trust her. She said that all the time except for work, she would be waiting for me at home. Early Tuesday afternoon, while still traveling, I received a frantic call from Julie on my cell phone. The last few times I talked to her on the phone, it seemed like something was bothering her, but she denied it when I asked about it and tried to seem cheerful. Tom, she said with despair in her voice, you said you would help me if I needed it. I asked, I'm afraid of Ralph. In fact, he has become angry lately and I don't know what to expect. Do you think I could stay with you and Bonnie for a few days? Certainly. Did you call Bonnie? I can't reach her either in the office or on my cell phone. She's at some meeting outside the office. Besides, Ralph has my car, and his car is in the workshop. Could you come pick me up? She answered even more excitedly. I'm on a business trip, but it's in the same direction from my house as yours, and only an hour's drive from you. Let me check and call you back right away, I answered sincerely. I consulted with my supervisor, who was with me on the trip. Everything went very well, and if I completed one more task, it would only take about 45 minutes he could do without me, even if he didn't like it. I explained that this was truly an emergency, and he agreed. I called Julie back and told her the news. Please hurry, was her sincere response. I completed the task in exactly 42 minutes and asked my boss to pick up my suitcase from the motel room and bring it with me. I went to Julie's house. When I got there, I was surprised when she didn't open the door right away. I knocked for a good 2 minutes before I heard her voice inside. Hello, Tom. Thanks for coming, but this is a false alarm. I'll call you tomorrow, I heard her weak voice from the other side of the front door. This definitely didn't look like Julie. She was in trouble. I said, okay, but call again if you need me. Then I went to my car, drove 3 houses away and parked. I managed to save her from Ralph. Julie was desperate. She had already packed her things, so we just took her 2 suitcases and a few other things and headed to my house. On the way, I tried unsuccessfully to call Bonnie. We returned home around 6:30 p.m. I was surprised Bonnie wasn't there, especially since her car was in the garage. I also parked in the garage and did not turn on the outside lights. I quickly made Julie dinner and then insisted she get some sleep. She didn't argue. She was emotionally and physically exhausted. When Bonnie arrived around 8 p.m., it was obvious that she had cheated on me again. I'm not going to hunt down the assholes this time. I'm throwing you out. It's all over between us. With these words, I began to pack 2 suitcases for her. Julie woke up from the noise and walked into our room with her eyes wide open. After Bonnie cried into Julie's shoulder and then asked Julie about her condition, I heard them talking in hushed voices. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could sense the worry in their voices. Just as I finished packing the second suitcase, I heard Bonnie screaming and calling Julie names. I could not believe it. I pushed Julie into the guest room and told her to lock the door. Then I took both of Bonnie's suitcases in one hand and pulled her along with me with the other while she screamed, "Sorry, Tom. We'll get through this. I love you," and other nonsense. I didn't say a word as I put her bags in the trunk of her car, sat her in the driver's seat, and handed her the keys. Only then did I speak. "My lawyer will call you at the office. You can come back here in 3 days. By then I'll be out of here and find another place. Don't come back early because the locks will be changed." Bonnie sobbed as she backed down the driveway. I closed the garage door and then stormed back into the house, cursing. I sat down at the kitchen table and started crying myself because I knew my marriage was over. Suddenly, Julie appeared. "Is it over with you and Bonnie?" she asked with an expression that was difficult to read. "Yes, absolutely, definitely," I answered. She smiled. "Why did Bonnie yell at you?" I asked. "Because I told her that she was a fool, and that if you finished with her, then I would come after you with everything I have." "I'm not stupid. If you're free, I'll kick Ralph to the curb in a heartbeat." A truly devilish grin appeared on her face. "Are you free?" she asked. Everything happened quickly. Julie offered to talk to the district attorney to reduce the charges against Ralph if he fully cooperated in her divorce proceedings against him. A couple of times he tried to make peace, but she just laughed at him. "Sorry. Why would I come back to you when I now have a man whom I have adored with unrequited love for the last 5 years?" she told him in my presence. Interesting, I thought. Bonnie also tried to make peace, but I told her straight up that I was sorry that things turned out the way they did, but I couldn't put up with her cheating anymore. I just didn't trust her. "You just want to replace me with Julie," she snapped at one point. Both Julie and I found other jobs. We sold both houses and split the proceeds with our ex-spouses. We moved to a city 3 hours away by car from where Bonnie and I used to live. On our first wedding anniversary, Julie and I found out she was pregnant. "What would you do if I tried to steal you from Bonnie before you married her?" she asked, stroking my cheek. "I would probably leave her gently and marry you," I replied with a grin. "Good answer," she grinned. "I'm sorry I didn't try," she said after a pause, now with a tear in one eye. "Now we are together. That's all that matters," I replied. Then I kissed her. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.